Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Slam Talk Sports. I'm Slam, and yes, all my multis did lose. That's why I'm still talking to you people. It is Monday, so that's why it is time for the review show of what was a huge round 3. But before I get stuck into all the games, I got to talk about the big story in football. And no, it is not Ryan Mansell and his 3-game suspension. That'll head to the tribunal on Tuesday for Zeta Tuesdays. We'll find out plenty more in a couple of days. What I want to talk about is the state of the Melbourne Football Club. They've been smashed by 58 points and 59 points to North Melbourne and the Gold Coast Suns. They've been beaten badly at their own game, which is contested possessions, stoppages, and simply winning the hard ball. Where do they go from here? They've lost to 2 of the worst clubs from last season. They've lost 2 games already on the MCG. And, well, they've made some big errors in their list management over the last 12 months. Christian Petrarca wanted out. He stayed. Clayton Oliver shopped to other clubs and then shopped himself to a few more clubs, and he still stayed. Max Gawn signed an extension at 33 years old, and he doesn't look a shadow of himself. What do they do from here? I mean, they were offered 2 first-round picks for Harrison Petty. They traded what was likely a top 5 pick in this year's draft to Essendon. So let's say Melbourne come bottom 4. They don't have a draft pick to point to. So, okay, well, we're getting in another good player. We've got Langford, we've got Lindsay, we've got Windsor. But you don't have anyone coming in the year that you come bottom 4, potentially. I just think this is the biggest story in the sport because they still have A-graders. They still have Stephen May, who was barely beaten on the weekend. They've still got Petrarca and Oliver. But will they break up the Beatles, as David King is claiming? Is it time to break up possibly the best big 3 ruck midfield combination I've ever seen of Petrarca, Gawn and Oliver? I think this is the big story for the rest of the season, and we'll find out more in the coming weeks. Let's start with the review of round 3, and we go all the way back to Friday night football as the Blues were downed by the Dogs to the tune of 8 points. Now, the Blues started so strongly in this contest, but unfortunately, as been the case for the last 3 rounds and the back end of last year, the Blues can't finish. They don't have the stamina to run out the contest, and they've lost 3 straight games despite holding double-digit leads in all of them. Now, a lot of Blues fans will say, oh, well, no Mackay, Curno's not in form. Our best players aren't playing well. I'm sorry, you got 10 goals out of Lewis Young, Brody Kemp, who kicked 5, and Charlie Curnow, who kicked 3. So what is the problem at Carlton? Is it coaching? Is it Michael Voss? Is what all the fans have been saying for the last 12 months. Their game style is too taxing on the bodies. They can put a lot of pressure around the ball. They can win contested possessions. They can get the ball in their forward half. But come the second half of games, they can't sustain this game plan. It is too much toll on their bodies. Is that the answer? Is that the only answer? Or simply, are their players not playing well? Are they not giving the extra handball, as we've seen many times through First Crack, through Footy Classified, through the million shows that Kane Corns is on? I think he's even on Corn Cob TV now. That's how many shows Cornsy is on in 2025. But what is the issue with the Blues? I mean, I'll look at my stat sheet right here. They just haven't been able to close out games. I mean, the Doggies were goalless for 37 minutes in this contest. Usually, it's pretty hard to come back from being goalless for well over half an hour, but that wasn't the case. They were grittier, they were stronger, they were more determined to win this game. It was Tom Liberatore, it was Matthew Kennedy, it was Riley Sanders, who had a brilliant game in only his 15th or 16th career game. I just don't have the answers for the Blues right now. I was saying, calm down, take a deep breath, it's going to be okay. But if you lose to the Doggies, and you lose to the Pies on Thursday night football, oh geez, oh my, oh me, oh my, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble if you can't win on Thursday night, and they'll be banging the drums. They'll be banging all those drums to take Vossi out in a funeral. I don't know what to do with the Blues. I had big expectations going into the year. So many A-graders. A good coach, in my opinion, in Voss. But those are all now wrong. I don't know if they've got the A-graders in their same form. I know Tom DeConey was nearly best on ground. But outside of him, who's playing really well? Wiedering's been alright. But besides that, no one's having a great year for Carlton. and what is likely going to be 0-4 start that is probably curtains on their 2025 season. The Doggies, they go from strength to strength. It doesn't matter who's not there. Bevo is coaching, probably the best he's coached since 2021. No Bont, no Treloar, no Waitman, no worries. You're getting great seasons out of Tom Liberatore, who should be All-Australian. You get another great game out of Sanders, a great game out of Kennedy. Forward half's working. I mean, Sam Darcy was lower Friday night. Wasn't quite up to his usual peaks because he copped Jacob Wiedering. Even Aaron Norton was anonymous. He was Casper the Ghost for 3 quarters. Then he pops up and kicks the winner. They're finding new ways to win. The Doggies look great so far. Let's see how they go next week. We go forward to Saturday afternoon at the MCG, which I already touched on in my opening stanza. The Demons got smashed by 10 goals by the Gold Coast Suns. Now, the Demons had won 12 straight against the Gold Coast by an average winning margin of 40 points. Hell, in their lowest of lows last season, they went up to the Gold Coast last year and they smashed them by nearly 10 goals. You had blokes like Harrison Petty kicking goals. You had Daniel Disco Turner doing a little jive all over Metricon Stadium, now people's first. But what's happened? What has happened to the Demons? What's happened to their game style? Their one wood. They got killed by Matthew Rao. They got killed by Noah Anderson. Hell, even Tuke Miller kicked 3 goals in what was, I think, is a career high. I've never seen Tuke Miller kick 2 goals, let alone 3 goals. I've just got big concerns for the Ds. On the Gold Coast side of things, they look fantastic. Matthew Rao is probably leading the Brownlow medal right now. He probably is. He was bursting out of stoppages like he was a light infantry man. He is a Group 1 racehorse now. In fact, they're all Group 1 racehorses of the Gold Coast Suns. King, Miller, Anderson, Flanders, hell, even the young kids, Walter, Rogers, Reed, they're all going to be guns. I am worried that our Gold Coast tanned, fake teeth, blonde-haired overlords are now coming to take us all. It can only be a matter of time until it is the time of the rising sun. So many positives out of that game. I mean, the Suns played their only game of the MCG on Saturday, but it gets over that hoodoo of like, oh, if we get there in finals, we play, I don't know, Hawthorn, or we're to play Collingwood, it's going to be too much. We're going to be overawed by the occasion. I hope that's not the case, but to get that experience on the hollow turf of the Melbourne Cricket Ground, it was crucial. And to beat Big Brother, the team that had bullied them for the last decade, was just as important. I love what I'm seeing from the Suns. We go forward to the twilight time, or Labradoodle kickoff, as I like to call it, between St Kilda and Richmond. Richmond was spirited. They gave a good fight for the first quarter, but ultimately the class, the kicking, and the charisma of Mr. Jack Sinclair, Mr. Naziah Wanganeen Miller, and Zach Jones? Oh, hell, Zach Jones had 20 touches as well and was dominant in this contest. Just about everyone from St Kilda had a good game. I mean, Jack Higgins kicked 3, Mitch Owens kicked 4. The thing is with the Saints is, well, they couldn't score before, but they kicked 135 points on the weekend. So many multiple goal kickers, which was huge because their DNA is defense. But God, if they can kick 100 points, even against a bad team, it raises their ceiling so much higher for this season. Mitch Owens kicked 4, as I mentioned. Multiples for Wood, for Higgins, for Collard, for Sharman. Oh, even Max Hall kicked 2. So many multiple goal kickers. It's going to be very hard to beat this team at Marvel Stadium. They will be a very strong outfit under the lid. Richmond, more of what we expect. I think round 1 was a brilliant victory. We talked about it as like, oh, this could be the best victory we've seen in 20 years, 10 years. Just because we don't think Richmond are much good. We really don't. They don't have anything about their game which thinks, oh, that's going to be tough to deal with. Oh, I've got to deal with Tom Lynch trying to snipe people and trying to start fights down 10 goals. That's going to be tough to deal with. Not really. There's not a single part of how they play which worries me. Now, I say that as an Essendon supporter, playing them in a couple of months, they might roll us. I accept that. But for the vast majority of the league, Richmond are no threat. Most weeks, they're going to lose by 10 goals, but you got to get games into the kids. Seth Campbell kicks, another 3 goals? He's kicked 7 or 8 in 3 weeks off a rookie list. That's all you can ask for. The young lights need to shine bright when given their moment. We fast forward to the double header on Saturday night. We had the 2 best games of the round, and they're on at the same time. Brisbane versus Geelong, up at the Gabba, in what was a tsunami. While there was a tsunami taking place in the first quarter at York Park, but we'll stay with Brisbane and Geelong. The Lions, they get by once again. They won by, about 10 points in the end. They were down 4 goals in the second quarter in what was tough conditions. Now, it wasn't really wet. The ball was a little bit wet, a little bit sloppy. It had rained all day in Brisbane, but come game time, the Gabba drained beautifully. It was just a bit sticky, a little bit humid. It's tough conditions to play in. I'm not going to dispute that. But the Cats, they handled it better. Despite the fact it's not usual Geelong conditions, you're not going to see that down the Ballarat Peninsula, they handled the slick ball better. It was Max Holmes, it was Dangerfield, it was Bally Smith, it was their transition game. It was not just punting the ball, it was carrying it and getting it deep in the forward line and converting. They did that well in the first half. And as we've seen with Brisbane at the start of this season, they've been slow starters. They worked themselves into the game. Just on halftime, there was a crucial goal kicked by Will Ashcroft to reduce the margin to about 20 points. What happens then? Will Ashcroft has the best game of his career, as said so by his coach, despite the fact 4 games ago he won a Norm Smith medal. That's how good Washcroft was in this one. It was about 33 disposals and a goal. Hugh McCluggage chips in as well. Dane Zorko chips in as well. The big one who has not showed up for Brisbane this season is Lachie Neale. Chalky Neale himself, the dual Brownlow medalist, well held down again by Tom Atkins and by Mark O'Connor. This is a slight issue for the Lions, not as much because their midfield is so deep, they've got so many good players running through there, but you get later into the season, you get to big finals, Lachie Neale will be required. He was the player of the finals last year. He was second best on ground in a grand final. He has to lift, but I know he had off-season surgery. I know he's working into the year. Only a matter of time before we see Brownlow level Lachie Neale. Cats were good, not quite good enough. They were disappointed they let this one slip. They head home to the Cattery on Friday night to play the Demons. They should get a win against the D's. Despite what I said before, if the D's win, it would honestly restart their whole year. It'd be fantastic for them, but I don't expect that to change anytime soon. Other game on Saturday night, which for me was the game I watched the most closely over the entire weekend, down at York Park, UTAS Stadium, as they like to call it, between Hawthorn and the GWS Giants. Now, the Giants got off to a fantastic start in this one. They kicked the first 5 goals of the contest. There was a very strong wind at York Park. So I would factor that into any bets you make in the future in Tasmania. Goal scorers, just disposals. It is hard to control the ball unless you play in those conditions a few times and you know what you're doing. Now, the Giants, as I said, got off to a very fast start, but it was only for a small amount of time before the Hawks played that Hawk ball. That Hawk pawn was not safe for work, the way they orchestrated this comeback in the second quarter. And it was really a 5 to 10 minute period where they get multiple centre clearances through Lloyd Meek, one of the best pickups over the last couple of years. And of course, my man, Parlez-vous Francais, Frenchie Cam McKenzie, who had 30 disposals, including 11 in the second and 11 in the third. Now, the Hawks are missing a couple of good players, in my opinion, in James Warple, who was out this weekend. And McKenzie has really taken up that slack and those guts by getting contested possessions, by winning it at the source, by beating players like Finn Callaghan and Tom Green to the football, and helping architect this comeback. It was Will Day as well. It was Nick Watson. It was Dylan Moore. It was all the prime movers. For me, Nick Watson had one of the best games you'll ever see. He honestly had one of the best games that I've seen because he adapted the conditions perfectly. He was so slick. He used it so well. He had 21 touches and a goal. Now, we've seen him kick 3-4 goals before, but this was such a clean performance at this ground, similar to the way he did it last year when he ended the Giants with the ice in my veins. We know this kid is special. Let's hear a couple of comments from his coach, Alistair Clarkson. A couple of comments from his coach, Sam Mitchell, after the game.
Zeke, I think sometimes you forget how young he is. So to play with his level of maturity tonight, I thought was important for us.
Just another young player, Nick. So he had 20 touches, kicked the goal, but probably most impressively was his pressure around the contest. How'd you see his performance or not tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think I chatted to him before. I think it was probably his best game for the club. I know he didn't maybe hit the scoreboard as much as he has in some others, but his importance to us. There was a play in the first quarter where everything was pretty much going against us, and he had no one to kick to. We'd lost all sort of structure of the game, and the game was a mess for us, to be honest. And he just found a way to make something good happen. And I think when you have players who are young like him, giving them the confidence and letting them, show their flair and do their things is an important thing. And fortunately with Nick, that he's someone who he's just so tough. He attacks the ball so hard. I was really pleased that he got a bit of reward for his efforts today, even though he didn't get it on the scoreboard. I thought his performance was. And the other one, probably at the other end of the spectrum, was Jack Gunston. I thought he played a really important role for us. Probably could have kicked a few more. It's unusual for him to be not as straight with his goal kicking, but I thought his role and his performance. Taylor's a phenomenal defender, so the fact that Gunners was able to at least half quell his influence at different stages, I thought was important.
There you go. He is a special talent. We've got Isaac Kako at Essendon. I'm hoping he is the sorcerer's apprentice to the wizard that is Nicholas Watson. Another big part of the game was taking away Sam Taylor. Taylor might be the best interceptor in the AFL and one of the best lockdown backs in general. What Hawks did is they put Jackie Gunston on his toes. They said, you sit on this guy, you sit on Sam Taylor and don't let him do what he wants. Gunston kicks 2 goals 3, could have kicked 4 or 5 quite easily, and Taylor's influence is quelled for the rest of the contest. Brilliant coaching from Sam Mitchell. On the other side of things, Adam Kingsley makes no excuses. Kingers, Mr. Bicep, there's nothing there, don't worry about it. Mr. Bicep, Adam Kingsley himself, he said the Hawks played better than conditioned. They were simply better in the contest. And now what? I'm not going to be too worried, because there's no finals played at York Park. Well, there was one in 2021 when Essendon lost, but that was bullshit. But usually there's no finals played at York Park. And the Giants, they pick themselves back up and they play the West Coast next week. Here's a couple of comments from Adam Kingsley after the match.
Pressure was great in the first probably quarter and a half.
Yep.
Just a case of not quite being able just to maintain that sort of red line intensity.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Hawthorn certainly found another gear in their contest. Halfway through that second quarter, I think perhaps for the last 15 minutes of that quarter, they were able to sort of find a few easy feedback options and use their shape quite well. Certainly in the second half, they were able to do that, which rendered our pressure a little less impactful. But I thought our intent around the ball was really quite good for the whole game. I don't think we ran out of steam. We're a really fit team, so I'm not worried about that at all. Yeah.
In the third quarter, how did they stop their running carry game, which is so effective in the first quarter?
Well, I think, I mean, there's a few things. We played a little bit too straight. We forced the handball a little bit too much when it wasn't open, and their come forward defence was really good. They had good depth, and then come forward. We were able to make a couple of good plays on the ball. So there's a few things that we need to tidy up. There'll be a few things that they're very happy with.
There you go. My favourite coach in the league and my second favourite coach, 2 absolute geniuses who I think will duke it out for the grand final in a couple of months' time. Just quickly to finish up on the Giants, Jake Stringer made his club debut. No goals for Jakey. He was lively without really putting it on the scoreboard. I think he might have a full family feast against West Coast on Sunday. Move forward to the not early kickoff, the 3:20 kickoff. Over in Adelaide, 2:50 their time, between North Melbourne and the Adelaide Crom. Now, North had a very spirited performance, I must say. I was very, very impressed by North Melbourne. Did I tip them? No. Will I tip them soon? Who knows? But what I did see was a bit of fight, a bit of moxie, and a bit of spirit. Every single time the Crows kicked 2 or 3 in a row, North hit back. Was it Darling? Was it Nicky Larkey? Was it Paul Curtis? Was it just the blokes who I trust week to week to show up for North to stop the bleeding? Because when Adelaide get on a roll, as we saw against the Saints and we saw against the Bombers, it is so hard to stop those cuts. They're all over your body. I mean, it's like self-flagellation, the amount of abuse you take from Adelaide when they're up and running. And the big 3, it's not quite Wash, it's not quite LeBron, Wade and Bosch, but Tex, Fogarty and Thilthorpe is the best trio in the league. The best triplets. I said it before. The space they give each other. The accuracy of their kicks and how good they are at blocking for each other in the marking contest. They're going to be so tough to deal with, especially at home. I expect them to average the most points in the league when they're at Adelaide Oval. But North, to their credit, stopped the bleeding. They kept it to sub 40 points, which is what I expected. And I was really encouraged by a lot of their players standing up in the contest. Whether it was Luke Parker, whether it was one of my personal favourites, Colin McKercher, just a beautiful kick of the football. They did enough to stick around. Ultimately, the firepower of the Crows is too much. And there's one player in particular I want to mention, Ben Keys. Ben Keys and the acquisition of Ben Keys has been so crucial to Adelaide turning themselves from a really poor football club in 2019, 20 and 21 during the COVID era into a side that can now compete for the premiership. He's kicked 4 goals last week, 2 goals this week, including the first goal of the game to start the fire rising. He's such a classy player, but in particular, it's how hard he works and how hard he runs. He's constantly going from flank to flank, putting pressure on, running back to put pressure on his defender to get behind the goals and to put it on the scoreboard. Him and Alex Neil-Bullen is the best tandem of half forwards, in my opinion, in the league with how hard they work. I talked about the Saints before, and they set their game up with great kicking and great half backs in Sinclair and Wanganeen Millera, while the Crows, in my opinion, their greatest strength is their forward line, but it is their half forwards in Alex Neil-Bullen and Benny Keys. He's having an all-Australian season so far. The Crows look fantastic. At home, I know they're going to be great. Let's see them against a good team away or against Hawthorn calibre opposition at the MCG. I cannot wait to see all those games unfolding in the next couple of months. And finally, we head to Perth for the RAC derby between West Coast and Fremantle. Now, Fremantle run out easy victors, 6 goals plus in the end. But West Coast, sorry, I lost my voice, but West Coast hung around for, a half to 3 quarters. They showed a bit of fight, they had some good finishes. But if you watch that game, Freo were dominant. Sarong, Jackson, Brayshaw, they did whatever they wanted out of stoppages, and it was just too easy the way that their ball was one handball out of the stoppage, and they had 20 metres of open space to be able to deliver it to Tracy, to never a miss, to Bolton even, who didn't even get on the scoreboard but looked lively. There are too many options for Fremantle. Now, we know Freo have struggled to score in the past, but this game was just too easy. There was no pressure. I mean, McGovern went down with an injury as well during the second half. We don't know how serious that is, but that's going to be really bad for West Coast if he's hurt. I just don't think they've got the cattle. I mean, the big question with West Coast now is, what is their future? What does it even look like? Harley Reid is there for now. He played like he was, pissed at the Tongala pub for half that game, trying to start brawls that anyone looked at him the wrong way. I just don't see it with West Coast. They don't have an influx of good young players and say, okay, they've got these 4 or 5 young players who are 18, 19, they're going to take them to the promised land. Like, those are the ones. They don't have like a collection of Sheasel, Wardlaw, McKercher, O'Sullivan, like these good young players are like, okay, they're going to win the ball. You can play them all ends of the ground, and they're very classy. You've got Harley Reid and not a lot else. Ruben Jinby was okay in this contest, but what happens if the nuclear strategy goes down? If things go down in smoke and Oscar Allen says, I'm out of here, boys. I'm the captain of the club. I've had 1 touch in 3 quarters, but I'm out of here. It's going to be really bad. If West Coast come bottom 2, sure, you get a compensatory free agency pick, but you've just lost the captain of your club and a 25-year-old centre-half forward. You can't replace those guys. Once you lose them, you're usually stuffed, okay? Essendon lost Joe Danaher in his prime for a free agency pick. Haven't played finals since. Tom Lynch left the Gold Coast Suns, and they're only just getting back to reality, getting back to being competitive now. They lost Stephen May the same way in a trade, but I just don't see the future for West Coast in the next 2 to 3 years with these players. They don't have the good young players coming through besides Reid, who's linked away every single week. I'm not going to talk about that right now, but it looks like a disaster for West Coast unless they can hit in the draft this year and they can find a way to convince their captain to stay. Until then, we'll figure out what's going to happen with Harley Reid and Oscar Allen later in the season. Just finally, to wrap up all the games, I want to put out my condolences and deepest sympathies to the Cracker family. Andrew Cracker passed away this morning at the young age of 42 years old. What a tremendous player he was, and what a huge influence he had on a group of young players, particularly those at the Giants, who he helped mentor and lead in their AFL journey. Deepest sorrows and sympathies to the Cracker family. Andy, you are such a great player to watch and a favourite of Slam Talk Sports. That is it for the Round 3 preview. I'll see you all later in the week to talk about how bad my Supercoach side is and to preview the round ahead, Round 4. Bombers aren't playing, so therefore my anxiety and depression will not be brought up on this week's episode. We'll love you all. see you all later in the week. STS will be on Instagram and will be on Twitter later in the week. Or so I say. We'll find out. Love you all. Enjoy the week. Go footy.